Hello and welcome to episode 13. Now, there are various books about Japan and in its war, and most of them tend to focus on things like samurai and this sort of thing, and the extreme honor. And one of the problems I find is that actually there are very few officers in the Japanese forces who I would say in World War II really do live up to the samurai ideal or come anywhere close. There is one who does for me, and that is Mitsumasa Yonai. And those are the words said to him by Emperor Hirohito, apparently. I really appreciated your duty and effort not to begin the war. I think we are not going to meet often like before. At this point, Hirohito put a pen and inkstone into a case and said, "These are the things that I have used. I would like to present this as a gift to you." Even today in Japan, to get a personal gift from the Emperor is a massive thing. It is... how do I put this? The Queen gives out Maundy money and those sort of things quite regularly, and this is a tradition in the UK. But it would be like her turning around and not just inviting you to Balmoral, but, I don't know, giving you a corgi. The Queen gave you one of her corgis. That is the equivalent of it. And I'm putting that suggestion in because someone has just made themselves very, very visible. He served the Imperial Japanese Navy from 1901 to 1945. He was Minister of the Navy, February 1937 to August 1939, and he did his best to try and keep a certain prince under control. He was Prime Minister, January 1940 to July 1940, when he was brought down by the army, who didn't feel sufficiently aggressive with the Americans, but he was doing his best to try and prevent a war. And eventually he is called back to be Minister of the Navy out of retirement, something which no one had ever done. Why? Because he'd actually retired when he became Prime Minister. That's one of the reasons why the army was able to get rid of him. Because he retired, because he didn't think it proper that you should be serving in the Navy or a serving military officer and be Prime Minister, a civilian post. Interesting enough, of course, Tojo never resigns from the army. This is a man who he doesn't certainly do nice things, and certainly is a product of his age, is a phrase which would turn up around a lot about him. But you have to respect his honour on that front. You also have to respect the fact that the Emperor trusts him implicitly, and he is critical at a very important juncture. Hello. I need to get to the mouse. Okay, thank you. So, right, he is born in the Awati Prefecture and is the first son of an ex-samurai retainer of the Navies clan. He graduates 29th from the Imperial Japanese Naval Academy in 1901, ranking 68 out of 125 cadets. He served on the corvette Kongo and the cruiser Toyota, and commissioned as ensign in January 1903. He was in administrative positions until near the end of the Russo-Japanese War, when he went to sea and destroy Izamama and the cruiser Iwate. He served as chief gunnery officer on the cruiser Nitake and the battleship Shikisimi, and again on the cruiser Toray. And then he's promoted to lieutenant commander in December 1912. So, yes. Hello, you. You're looking at me for a reason. I know, you like this one. He would have a fairly regular, but also a fairly stellar career. he becomes chief of the 3rd Section Imperial General Staff in December 1926. He's commander-in-chief of the 1st Expeditionary Fleet, which is sent to the Yangtze River in China in December 1928. He commands 3rd Fleet in December 1932. Commands Sasebo Naval District and Yokosuka Naval District. While in command of Sasebo, he was part of the group which determined that the Shidori class torpedo boats were flawed, and is one of the ones who's very prepared to say, this is a bad design, this is causing trouble across our ships, we need to fix it. It's interesting that during the February the 26th incident, when that erupts in Tokyo, he's actually visiting his mistress, apparently. And doesn't realise anything of the situation until he returns to his base the following morning. You know, it actually began a few blocks away. His first term as Navy Minister is after he's become a full admiral in 1937. And it's from pretty much this point onwards he is a member of the Supreme War Council, which is kind of like the Privy Council in Britain, but even more. It actually has power. As Navy Minister, especially during his first term, he's alarmed by the tension between Japan, Britain and the United States. Especially, as he puts it, that the Imperial Japanese Army is currently tied down in China. Somehow said he described it as a quagmire. I'm not sure. I doubt he used that exact word. But his efforts mean that ultra-nationalist extremists and others, kind of like with Isoroku Yamamoto, decide to target him for several assassination attempts. He proves very unsuccessful to assassinate. And there are various interesting stories, but I think it's fairly safe to say that his combat skills in terms of unarmed combat and using weapons, a lot of the stuff he downplays. But there are some stories which go around about him which would suggest to me that perhaps his father had passed on some of his family's traditional skills to his son. I'm not sure, but he does seem to be quite capable and adept at avoiding being assassinated. Very adept at avoiding being assassinated. And some of the assassins don't have a nice experience, let's say. He ends up being made Prime Minister in January 6th, 1940, largely thanks to Emperor Hirohito, who basically goes, I have no trust of anyone else at this moment. So he continues to oppose a tripartite pact with Germany and Italy, and tries to push pro-British and pro-American stances. And as said, he retires from the Navy before becoming Prime Minister, which is why when you see pictures of him being Prime Minister, he is wearing a suit and tie and looks like a businessman. There are various points at which people go, oh, who pushes and who gets rid of him. I think it's definitely the machinations of Tojo, but it's always listed as, of course, Shunroku Hatta, who is the Shunroku Hatta, who is the army minister who resigns from Yonai's cabinet. And of course, with the Japanese constitution, you have to have a serving general and a serving admiral as your ministers of the navy and ministers of the army at that time. So, as a result, Yonai is forced out of post, and so he's forced to resign on the 21st of July 1940. and the Tripartite Pact is signed on the 27th of September 1940. I.e., this guy tried to stop war. Now, could he have achieved something? I don't know. But there is one thing. He certainly is respected, certainly strong enough, and certainly has enough support from the civilian factions and from the Navy. And the reason you say he has this support from the Navy is because Tojo is forced, tries to find another person to basically appoint as his controlling animal, creature. And Hirohito basically goes, the Navy will not accept anyone other than Yonai. At which point the Navy goes, Yonai's not serving. Hirohito goes, I am reinstating him. To a large extent. At which point the Navy goes, yes, he is very acceptable to us. We will all support him. And he comes back as Minister of the Navy. And that's kind of a shot across the bow for Tojo and others. However, key decisions. He actually supports the creation of these things. Yes, he thinks it's very sensible to build them. Now, his way of thinking about them is that the Japanese can never afford to build and man enough ships to outnumber the British and the Americans. So, they have to outstatus them. If you want to go to state, go down. It's very difficult for me to talk over you. Oh, you want a biscuit? And that's what he saw these ships as. He felt they'd been forced out the treaty system because there was never going to be a place for Japan in it, as it was then that time constructed. He felt that they hadn't been paid enough attention to. But he was certainly more of a member of a treaty faction than a navy faction. He just felt that the treaty needed to be better negotiated, and there is actually a good argument which says that if in 1930, when he is promoted to Vice Admiral, if he'd been sent as part of the group to the First London Naval Treaty to argue the case, he's a very erudite, very good politician in terms of the IJN. He might have got a better deal from the Navy, but they didn't go with him. But he wants big status ships which can act as a deterrent. He wants things which will go around the world and have presence for Japan. So people look at them and think, oh, they're colossal, we can't fight them. Not, they're numerous, so they're going to come and destroy us. It's a deterrent policy. It's a case of, okay, they have these really powerful things. They don't have a lot of them. They have enough of them, they're going to take a lot of our ships to take down, so it's better for us to not... we'll win, so we can't claim they're being aggressive to us. And that was his sort of idea. It's a deterrent idea. And it works as a deterrent strategy. It doesn't work as a strategy for building for war. That's the problem. This is a picture of him as Prime Minister, but this is the important thing. This is from his first time as Minister of the Navy. He's apparently on a 5-ministry commission, on the one that was intended to make a plan for potential war. And the Minister of Finance, Satoru Ishiwata, who has no English Wikipedia page, and so it's very interesting to try and track down details on, because mainly you use those pages to try and find the sources when you're not sure where might be a good book. And then once you find those books then to list primary sources, and maybe you can go and find some decent primary sources. That's what you do if you're researching in a language which you're not particularly familiar with or good at. has nothing, so I'm limited. Apparently asks Yonai, and I found this in the book I've read and in a couple of other sources, but it's in different versions. So I've gone with roughly the version which I think it probably is. Is it possible for the Imperial Japanese Navy to triumph over America and Britain? Yonai answers, no. The Imperial Japanese Navy is not designed to open fire against them. That's the interesting thing. Not designed to open fire against them. It's designed to deter them, but not open fire. To be a threat, but not open fire. It's a deterrent. It's a risk fleet strategy in a way. The Third Reich and the Italian Navy are out of the question. He doesn't rate their chances at all to win a war. And another thing which shows his character is that, as I talked about the incident on the 26th, in 1936, there's an attempted coup d'etat by young officers in the Imperial Japanese Army. And the Imperial Japanese Army doesn't want to call them rebels. They don't want to call them, it's shameful to admit that our troops are rebelling. Shameful, shameful. Yonai, who's the commander of the Sasebo Naval District at the time, labels them as insurrection troops immediately, and let the chief of his staff, Admiral Ino Shigoshi, publish his position in to all the Sasebo Naval District. And by publish, I mean get it proclaimed everywhere. As such, naval officers decide to stop assisting the rebellious troops. In fact, they get away as far from it as possible because they pretty much know what will happen next. You've pissed off the Admiral, he is going to come and kick you. And you aren't going to win versus this one. He is a very strong character. His time as Prime Minister is interesting because it has a lot of consensual, a lot of good, interesting work, and this is one of the stories I find the most interesting about him. Despite his cabinet being in post for roughly half a year, the cabinet members and their followers, and sort of all these the people who supported it, decided to form a friendly reunion group after his resignation in 1937, and it lasted. It's still going. It's called the Iki Rokokai, which means 16th gathering because he's appointed on the 16th and loses his post on the 16th of those months, and they still meet. Their descendants apparently still meet. They have formed such a close bond and friendship, and I honestly can't imagine any. I'm trying to think of any British Prime Minister who's managed to form a cabinet which have ended up cooperating so well that they would actually actively organise a reunion. I can't think of an American president who's formed a cabinet that would actively want to get together in a reunion. Certainly can't think of another Japanese Prime Minister from this period. So, this is the kind of character you're dealing with. And yes, China, not nice what he does some places there. In some of the orders he gives and he's involved in, no, not a nice person. But he's a very different character. He remains Minister of the Navy and presides over the final dissolution of the Imperial Japanese Navy. He also plays a significant role in the International Military Tribunal for the Far East, and works with even Hideki Tojo in the end to coordinate their testimonies to make sure Hirohito is spared from indictment. After the war, he devotes the rest of his life to trying to help rebuild Japan, and he works incredibly hard on this. He dies in 1948 from pneumonia at the age of 68. And the one thing which you could say about this gentleman, and I do call him a gentleman, but also, as I said at the beginning, one of the few officers who you could say probably came close to the samurai ideals, which are so often put forward when you're discussing Japanese naval officers and Japanese military officers in World War II. You know, they're samurai, they're this, that, and the other. And going, considering what they're doing? Really? We're going to call them samurai? No. There again, being samurai is kind of like chivalric knight. It always seems to be that their grandfathers or grandparents' age was the chivalrous period, the high samurai period where, you know, knights were knights and they didn't have to get involved in mucky political stuff. They protected the weak and all those sorts of things. Anyway, he works really hard and he does a lot of work for the Japanese. And if ever Japan produces an admiral class again, if there is not a Yonai on those ship names, then they will have severely sold themselves short. Because you couldn't have had a more honourable servant of Japan in the 1920s, 30s and 40s than this gentleman. Couldn't have had one who tried harder to preserve peace. So, what have we got coming up? This is going to be out on the 22nd of September. I haven't recorded some of the earlier ones at this point. But I'm recording this one because I had it ready to go and I wanted to make sure it was up. And yes, this one's going to be out on 22nd of September, so it's going to be after the 16th, after the 19th, before the 23rd, which will be announced soon, probably tomorrow. Probably before then. Anyway, it's going to be a lot of good history coming up. I hope you enjoyed this series. I know I have. As I said, I am going to try and do more work as I can get access to more sources. And one of the things I'm looking at is whether to set up, because frankly, due to your kindness, and because I've now got these sort of things going on, I need to work out how I'm going to start processing the money coming in. And whether I'm going to go with a limited company route or a charity route or a combination. And as much as I like the charity route, that produces all sorts of rules and regulations if you go for a full charity. But a limited company doesn't seem right. I'm tempted to go for the sort of, you can do a not-for-profit in that you do a limited company route, but then any profits you can donate to your charity and combine. I might do sort of something like that. I don't know. But whatever it is, the money which comes in and which you are so kind and generous in donating, watching the adverts, joining the channel, subscribing to Patreon, buying stuff from Spreadshirt, all the stuff you do is going on more research. And you know, if I didn't have the funding from all of you, I wouldn't have been able to afford to do this project. Because I've had to buy several £100s worth of books to help with this. And it's lovely, it's critical to get this sort of stuff done. And I love buying books. But it's one of those things that the joys of, as I've explained, academia and employment mean that I'm a contract lecturer at the moment. And I'm applying for tenured posts, but having it managed to get the joy of getting one. Which means technically unemployed during the summer, so that they can save their money. I understand it. I don't like it, but I understand it, and I'm not going to hold it against them, because universities are short of money, everyone's short of money. Well, universities, but I'll leave that one aside. So, without the income, I wouldn't have been able to afford to do this, so thank you. Thank you very much. You make the research possible, you make these videos possible. Take care, have a nice day, and I hope you enjoyed. And I hope you enjoy the videos which are coming up. And as I said, the 8th of October, Battle of Kentish Knock. Probably the slides I've had written for the longest. Thank you everyone, take care.